If there are two things that Aussie petrol heads love, it's hot hatches and upspending good money to make those hot hatches sportier and more exciting. And this new Volkswagen Golf GTI is just one of those two things. At a quick glance in its King's Red paintwork, it looks as fetching as the best of the breed. But this example is the tamer, more luxurious spec given all available options, and in a configuration that perhaps few buyers will opt for. So while it's not the hottest GTI on the block, we want to find out if it's the nicest hot hatch in its segment. So is it currently the best bang for buck all-round hatchback that good money can buy? Well, let's find out. Train spotters will notice that this example sits on 18-inch Richmond wheels rather than the more popular 19-inch Adelaide wheels that so many owners opt for. That's because this example doesn't fit the sound and style package that adds $2.5 grand to the bottom line. Leaving that box unchecked means that this car also misses out on a head-up display and Harman Kardon audio. Nice stuff, but none of it's really essential, at least for my money. And speaking of money, a clean skin GTI currently clocks in at $54,990 before on-roads. So it's a little bit more expensive than when it launched last year at $53,100. So does it look any less evocative to my eyes because of the smaller wheels? Not really. However, when the Mark 8 fronted up in the middle of last year, it didn't really strike me as being all that stylistically bold or adventurous. So while it doesn't really scream boy or girl racer, the basic GTI does bring some tasty performance kits such as adaptively damped suspension and an electronic front LSD. So in theory at least, this version should have all the friskiness that a GTI can offer, if with a slightly better ride comfort because of the slightly smaller wheels. Speaking of which, the money you can save by opting out of the sound and style package you can actually put into with the luxury package. At $3,900, the Luxo bundle is a fair whack more than the sound and style stuff. But if you're using your GTI as a daily driver, and a good many owners do, you might want to seriously consider this option instead. Those Luxo splurges are all on the inside, so let's go check it out. The standard GTI fits cloth tartan trim which dates back generations. But ticking the luxury package box brings Vienna leather appointed seats with very fetching red stitching. And both of the front seats in the luxury package are both heated and cooled. But if there's a bit of a stitch up in this package that costs almost $4 grand, it's that only the driver's seat gets electric adjustment and electric lumbar adjustment. The passenger side seat is just mechanical. For a small hatchback that wants for 60 grand with options but before on-roads, that's a bit rich. You do get a sunroof, but it's not a panoramic design that covers both rows. It's not the raciest cabin, and in fact for a hot hatch it's downright restrained. For better, or perhaps not so better. This was a brand new interior design for the entire Mark 8 Golf lineup, and it has been one that's garnered a bit of mixed acclaim. And for my money, 18 months on, it hasn't gotten any better with added familiarity. It's clean, mature and somewhat minimal, which is really good, but it's so austere that it really doesn't have much character at all, let alone a hot hatch character. But while the format does polarize, it does really appeal to a lot of owner tastes. But there have been enough uncomplimentary comments from some owners that Volkswagen is backpedaling in some areas. These include the unpopular touch-sensitive buttons on the steering wheel and the clumsy interface of the multimedia system, which is downright garish in most of the colour themes that you can choose from. The 10.25-inch virtual cockpit is fine enough, though hardly class-leaning in size or content, while infotainment can be a chore to navigate, particularly on the move. And just why some of the controls are hidden, such as deactivating the stop-start, is really beyond me. The rest of the cabin is quite simple, and the stubby transmission controller and its close array of buttons work a treat for quick action without really moving your hand. But some of the cabin, particularly the boring mid-grade door cards, are quite low rent for the sort of premium position the GTI pitches. But despite some of these little foibles, it really remains an excellent place to spend a lot of time either in peak hour or out on the open road. And part of that quality of the experience is the excellent ergonomics. The location of the seats, the wheel and the placement of the controls are all really natural, and everything falls neatly to hand. Right, let's check out the second row. Another big Golf positive is its smart packaging. There's plenty of room back here, and like the front row, it's comfy and well resolved. Plus it doesn't skip on appointments, so you get third zone climate control, dual USB-C ports, and 2 cup holders in the armrest. The leather seats in the back here are nicely contoured, and you could spend long hours in the back here without being uncomfortable. Right, next onto the boot. Boot space is also quite strong. Now, it's only 381 litres, but it's quite a practical and usable space with a dual layer floor, and you get a space saver spare. Ownership, well, it starts with fuel consumption, and the GTI comes with a claim of 7 litres for the combined cycle. However, in our week with this particular GTI, it tended to hover in the high 8s to the low 9s mark. It comes with Volkswagen's 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty, which is decent, although that's industry standard these days. In terms of servicing, you can buy an upfront 5-year care plan that's $2,800, and the intervals are 12 months or 15,000 kilometres. In the last 12 months, the medium budget direct customer spent $847 to comprehensively insure a new Volkswagen Golf GTI. Everybody's situation varies and your premium will vary based on things insurers take into account, like where you live, how you drive, and where you garage your car. Of course, what's critical to any small hatchback experience that wants for $60,000 is how it drives on road. The combination of the EA888 2-litre turbocharged petrol engine and a rather wonderful MQB platform has long been a strong suit for the GTI. And both the essentials of the engine and the platform were carried over for the 7th generation Golf. After Australian spec made do with just 169 kilowatts and 350 newton meters in GTI's past, finally GTI gets the full performance tune from overseas, which is 180 kilowatts and 370 newton meters. And those outputs are now standard as a base version. That's fine, but when this car launched, there were two things that made it a little more pedestrian than its predecessor. For one thing, there's no more 3-door, and the entire range is now a more boring, if more practical, 5-door format. But the other real sting is that now you cannot get a Golf GTI with a conventional 6-speed manual, which you can get in overseas markets such as the UK. And for someone who has a 3-door manual Golf GTI at home, those are 2 steps backwards. Still, that turbocharged 2-litre 4 and the 7-speed dual clutch transmission, which is the only transmission you can get, is quite a happy marriage. The engine has plenty of mid-range energy and pulls like a freight train when you rev it out. And the wet clutch transmission is quite slick on the move and quite a bit better than some of its patchy predecessors. It's a really flexible combination, so it's really nice and refined around town, but can really drum up quite a lot of heat when you're up it for the rent. It really is the kind of powertrain that does suit GTI's all-rounder credentials. But it's not perfect. Jump on the loud pedal from a standstill and the powertrain can get caught snoozing, particularly when you have stop-start activated. So when you come to a standstill, you're almost always tapping the little stubby gearbox selector for sport, which can be fun or quite annoying depending on your viewpoint. The EA888 does sound pretty raughty, and you do get a couple of different sonic modes to choose from. However, when it settles into a cruise out on the open road, the exhaust can drum up a boomy drone. Quick? Well, its maker claims that the GTI will hit 100 kilometers an hour from a standstill in 6.4 seconds, but I've got some news for them. We've just tested this car and it actually did it in 6.17 seconds, which was considerably quicker than its claim. But it's point to point where the GTI really does show its best turn of pace. It can cover ground really quickly, and much of it is down to the talents of that MQB chassis. The front end is really responsive without being too pointy or too quick in the steering action. And the chassis is certainly quite alert to reacting to driver inputs. That new electronic LSD adds a bit of extra purpose on corner exit. The grip from the Bridgestone Potenzas is good but not excessive, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Not having really assertive grip means that the chassis gets to shine at less than ballistic pace, and it weighs in a little over 1,400 kilos. And the dynamics are actually quite ingrained into this chassis because it's quite handy regardless of whether you've got it in sport or comfort mode. Better yet, you can adjust the dampers through 15 progressive steps. However, if there's a bit of a downside, it's that in the breadth of the 15 settings, in its softer setting, it still is a little bit too sharp when you're going over speed bumps. The overall experience really isn't as hot and spicy as its more expensive Golf R sibling, but really, so what? For its extra output, its all-power traction and its much lauded drift mode, the Golf R does still cost north of $66,000 and really does smack of a lot of excess when you compare it to the GTI. And I'd wager that this humbler GTI is actually a better balanced all-rounder anyway. Weighing into its all-rounder credentials is that the GTI gets the full IQ Drive safety suite. Bundled into that is rear and front cross traffic assist. The GTI is also rated a full 5 stars with ANCAP. Is the Mark 8 the best GTI of the modern era? No, it isn't. For my money, it's 2008's Mark 7.5 GTI original. 3 doors, a manual gearbox, and under $40,000. 3 years on, the Mark 8 arrived at over $53,000 and it's now $55,000. And I'd have to say that this Mark 8 version is GTI's spirit in a slightly diluted form. That said, these days times are changing because there are stalwart hero cars like the Renault Megane RS that are either gone or on their way out. And the latest versions of machines such as Honda's Civic Type R are starting to ask for really stupid money. So those things considered, it looks like GTI is pretty good value right here and now, if you ditch a lot of the costly options, because it really is a sweet car in most basic form. And despite a few little missteps, it remains one of the nicest performance hatchbacks to drive anywhere and anytime. So that's what I think, but how about you? Put your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe while you're at it. And as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.